Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today, I'm really excited to have Diana Place with me. Diana is the founder of Third Act Quest, and her goal is to reframe aging for individuals all around in the workplace and in our culture. And she helps to guide people to reimagine the decades ahead of them to create third act lives of joy, meaning, and purpose. And she also coaches corporate executives through times of transition to reinvent their lives in their 50s and beyond. And thank you so much for joining me today, Diana.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here with you, Jackie. We met a little bit ago, and it's really nice to connect. And thank you for having me.
I'm so thrilled that you've got a whole business that revolves around the same theme that my podcast is meant to have. You know, the idea that old age isn't really an age anymore. It's, what was old for our grandparents is now like middle age for us. And we're not meant to be retiring from life. We're retiring to something. And that's the whole goal of this show, is to try to share that with people. So let's talk a little bit about what you call the third act. What's involved in that for you?
Well, to me, I don't want to get anyone caught up in the idea that life does have three distinct phases. In fact, that is something I want to make sure that I don't convey with the name of my business, Third Act Quest. To me, it's symbolically just like in a play, there's a third act where the hero has gone through all of these different learnings and quests and arrives at a place of understanding and clarity about what's important to them. And we play it out through the third act. So for me, in 2018, I had three really life-rocking events that lined up perfectly to be an awakening or an aha moment for me. Most of my life I had spent doing what I was supposed to do. I worked really hard. I believed what Gail Sheehy and everybody in the psychology world said was the distinct life passages. I was leading my linear sort of building, escalating my career, having a family. I was leading that life for most of my life. There were little glimmers every once in a while where I'd say, like, wait, what is this? What am I doing? This isn't me. I'm not really fulfilling my heart's desire with my work. What am I doing? And so I'd jump off for a few years, and then I'd find myself back in that sort of belief that I had to follow this linear plan. So I found myself in 2018 with a cancer diagnosis that stopped me in my tracks. It actually caused the closing of a business I'd been working like crazy on for 4 years as an entrepreneur. And then I was also facing an empty nest around the corner. So all of that really, really stopped me. And I spent a lot of time over that year and the next year thinking about my life. But, and here we are. They say a lot of our passions come from those things that we care about most and those things that we need most. So basically, Third Act Quest was born out of my own personal quest to really discover what my life was supposed to be about and what my purpose was, so that as I looked forward, I could blend I could use my inner passion to serve and support people as a fuel for my business. And so Third Act Quest was born, and here we are today. I've enjoyed every step of the way, and I'm learning and uncovering different aspects of people and how people approach this part of their lives. So I'm happy to be here to share what my experiences and learnings are.
That's wonderful. And it's funny you say everyone, or not everyone, but many people think that is the way life goes. You grow up, you go to school, you get married, you have a family, you have a job, and then you finish. You have that, 2.3 kids and the little white picket fence, and everybody's happy, and that's the way life goes. But life never works out that way, or very rarely does it work out that way without some little hills and valleys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
You
say,
know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was very moved by a recent book that I read by a gentleman named Bruce Feiler called Life is in the Transitions, and I highly recommend it. It's really about how to master change throughout any part of your life. And so after his non-research based, but about 250 interviews, he really has, his premise is that we all experience across our lives a certain number of what he calls life quakes. I call them lightning strike moments. They are crises, they are challenges. Hello, 2020, we've all had a very collective challenge in the pandemic. But throughout each of the stories, and these life quakes or these moments can, or I also think positively as your inspirational aha moments, like, oh man, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, can happen when you're 12, when you're 50, when you're 70. It doesn't really matter. But what really comes down to it is you go through so many transitions in your life. And if you look back, you can see, and as I say, if you've been on this planet for over 50 years, you know that the time you lost that job, yeah, it was a struggle. It was emotionally painful and maybe financially painful for quite a while. But in most cases, there was some personal reckoning you did that landed you in a better place, or in something that was more in line with your heart. Maybe not making more money, but more in line with your heart. So, so it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time.
So what do you do to help people? I know you help them find their hows and their whys for their life. How do you help them find the meaning in their life?
So there are a number of things a number of approaches that I take. I have both group and individual coaching programs, and I sort of customize. I do customize based on the people that are in a particular group. The groups are usually 12 to 15 people. And the individual coaching, of course, is much more individualized. But I have a number of tools and processes that I've developed or that I've sort of pulled from different programs I've been a part of. There are all sorts of really wonderful personal development programs that many of us have done either through our work or through other personal ventures. So I've sort of put together a framework that really goes in 4 stages. The first is to, have, I hate the word assessment, but it really is just sort of a level set of understanding where you are. What is it that, I think you were a part of my limiting beliefs workshop recently. What are the limiting beliefs that are inside of you that were given to you when you were very young that are still ruling? Many you've been able to push aside, but they're still ruling all your decisions that you make and are holding you back. So we do that. We then do some really profound visioning process where I break up your life into 12 chunks. Your personal life is in a number of chunks, relationships, your work or other passion adventure, and then your spiritual, psychological, and then the fun sections, which are really your dreams and adventure desires and things like that. So we break it up into those 12 different chunks, and we go through the process of understanding your ideal vision for that part of your life. And then importantly, for each of them, why? Because if you don't have a profound emotional why, you'll never pursue things. So we really try to get down to the why, and then we come up with some ideas and ways you might do that. And then I go through another period. The third part is to really taking all of that discovery we do into a really fun process of brainstorming and putting together plans. I don't call them a plan. It's not a life plan, not a business plan. It is a series of potential prototypes almost that can start your imagination going and can start you putting some milestones and goals in place. So in the end, they end up with, a 1-year plan and a 5-year plan. with the promise that they'll always be really always connecting with themselves and morphing it and tweaking it along the way. We all learned from the pandemic, if you had a small business or you had a job or you just have anything in life, it really caused us to stop and need to pivot and change. So we need to do that with our lives, even if it's not a pandemic. We need to always adjust and not, not just think that there's this one particular goal. We have to be willing to shift. So I hope that was clear. I hope that was clear. That's the approach.
That's really good, actually. That lays it out quite clearly. If go back just for a sec, you talk about having a really deep emotional why. What do you do for people who have never really thought about that? They've never really had anything deep or profound that they've thought about. They've gone through their lives, they've done that little linear progression, but now they're at a point where, life is just sort of there. And
usually in that case, there are some pretty early discovered reasons for that in the process we go through. In some cases, I think one-on-one coaching is more valuable for some people who may be a little bit more closed from wanting to explore there. It's maybe a little painful. Maybe it's something they've tried before and they failed and they just don't want to go through it again. Or maybe they're constantly comparing themselves to others and don't feel, they still have this lack of confidence. But the group programs are amazing because you'll have a group of 10 to 12, maybe 15 people who really, really are there for each other. So I'm there moderating and coaching, and I've got the framework going, but it's amazing how people open up. I had women at actually my first retreat was an in-person retreat before the pandemic. And I had women writing me notes and calling me after for weeks saying, "You do not know how much this totally changed my life. I'd never realized how much the fact that, I was always different from my brothers and sisters led me to just be a conformist. I never understood that I could have more than just the set way of living, that, I had chosen to jump off of my career for a while to raise children. And I just had it in my head that that was going to be my life and that I'd have to just, get some golf clubs and plan to retire with my husband. That, I didn't think about all those bubbling up little passions I've had all these years. And that now that I had an empty nest, I could now go pursue either an entrepreneurial venture or a nonprofit service kind of venture. So I haven't encountered a person that didn't open up to that.
Somehow,
I encountered plenty who would say, and that's why I say most people at this, in their 50s and 60s, they've been going on adrenaline, and they'll get to a point where maybe they start to see this date where they know they're going to be retiring from a job, or they see the children off and no longer needing them as a parent in that way. And all of a sudden they freeze. And instead of saying, "Woo, clean slate," they're afraid because it's so unknown and uncertain. So most people have that.
They have something somewhere. Yeah.
And you literally say, it's almost like the old-fashioned cartoon where they have a little thought bubble and goes, "Oh my God, what's next?" It's like no clue. So it's a universal fear that they won't figure out what their why is. But
everybody has one.
With, it's there in all of us, and some of it's surprising and exciting, I think.
So you've got a lot of different programs. You've got the group coaching and the private coaching that you talked about. That's part of your Living Forward program. Is that?
Yes.
And it's also available if you want to do it on your own independently. Is that right?
Yes. That's one of the benefits for me as a business person. When the pandemic hit, I never wanted to be one of those online courses. I'm just like, they're really good, but I always wanted human contact. If I was going to support someone or guide someone, I felt like it had to have that, whether it's on Zoom or in person, it
Yeah.
had to be. However, I had a number of people say either the timing didn't work for them to fit into one of our group sessions, or economically speaking, individual coaching is a bit more expensive or costly. So it's a very affordable way. And because of the power of video, I'm able to record things that feel personal. So I do have an sort of an independent study, I call it, that people can pick up and do on their own at their own pace. That's another thing, that the group course is a 6-week program, and we have weekly calls. Some people are too busy for that, or they feel they're too busy, or it's maybe not the right time. So the automated sort of independent study option is there.
And you've also got what you call the talking circles. I've seen the emails about it. I haven't managed to be there on a Tuesday night yet, but can you tell a little bit about those?
Well, that was born out of the pandemic. First made me aware that I love to gather people together and connect about ideas, share ways that people handle things. And so I started it right in the middle of the pandemic. I started having these Zoom gatherings, and just people drop in. They don't cost anything. They're just really, as I say, one day it will be 5 people that will show up. One day there'll be 50 people that will show up. So then in September, I'm not sure if you were able to attend, I held an event called The Gifts of Your Third Act, which was a 4-night Zoom series where I pulled in, I think I had like 20 experts, talking about aging, talking about resilience, talking about intergenerational communication. It's a really, really fun event. So it really got me excited about using Zoom more. So I have a first and third Tuesdays at 7:30 Eastern gathering for an hour. And each month, so each 2 calls in the month has a different theme. Tonight, which I know this will be airing later, but the December theme is transition. So we're all in such a transition phase right now, and leading into 2021. So that is something I love. And I will tell you, one of the things in the hopper for me that I'm extremely excited about, and I can imagine that some of your guests could be really interesting parts of, and you certainly could be a very interesting part of. I want to do a thing called Third Act Stories, which it will be a virtual storytelling event. People living really interesting, they don't have to be, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that kind of importance, but they're leading really interesting, creative, inventive, but really heartfelt third acts. And I want to do that virtually, and eventually I want to have these gatherings again in person. So that's in the hopper.
That sounds really interesting.
Oh,
that'll be a lot of fun.
I think so. Yeah, we have to stay in touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you about the Tuesday night calls or about your programs?
Well, there are a couple of things. I have a website, thirdactquest.com, and my email is diana@thirdactquest.com. But I also, one of the things on my website, there's a place that you can sign up and register for what amounts to, at most, I think about a weekly email that I send out. It's one part inspiration, and then there are announcements, like things like the talking circle schedule, and give people the Zoom links. The other thing that I've decided to do, because it's when you work with someone, or when you imagine that you might want to hire or work with a coach to help you through a life transition, to help me, and in my case, the people that are interested in exploring their third act, it's really hard unless you know someone or you feel comfortable with someone to really jump and say, oh, I'm going to sign up for this program, or I'm going to hire this. So I've started to offer discovery calls, I call them, where they're complimentary, 30 to 45 minutes. It's the equivalent of a coaching call. So they get to know me, I get to know them. We get to know where their life is heading at the moment and what challenges they're facing and what they're thinking, and see if we're a fit. So I offer those. So people can, I have a little link on my website that people can actually go and just schedule that call themselves.
And then they can see if they really feel like, getting involved in that right now.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I want to do is have someone sign up for one of my online programs and get into it and say, this isn't for me, or, I will readily say that all people don't necessarily speak up and in their style of communicating or relating. So I think this is just like, it's like a taste test. Thing.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'll make sure that all of those, the links and everything is on the show notes so that people can find you.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate
really enjoyed chatting with you. I think Third Act Quest, even if it's not specifically a third act, is a wonderful idea. And I think that everyone needs to start thinking about that.
Well, please let me know, Jackie, if I can ever be of any assistance to you. I love what you're doing with your podcast, and I'd love to and plan to share that on my website as well. So thank you.
Lovely. Thanks so much for being with me, Diana. I really enjoyed it.
I did too, Jackie. Have a beautiful day.